My brother's fiancée had just called me a charity case, in front of 200 people, at their engagement party, and everyone, my parents, my aunts and uncles, even my girlfriend, just stood there, frozen, like they were waiting to see if I'd finally break. But what none of them knew, not one single person in that room, was that I'd been planning this moment for 6 months. Every detail, every word, every devastating second of what was about to happen. If you've ever been the family scapegoat, the one they love to pity while celebrating everyone else, stay with me. Because what happened next changed everything. My name is Darius Cole. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the daughter my parents apologize for. Not to my face, of course. Never to my face. But I've heard it, overheard it, felt it in every introduction, every family gathering, every holiday dinner where my accomplishments were footnotes and my older brother Julian's achievements were headline news. This is Julian, our eldest, chief of surgery at Mercy General. Just brilliant. Saving lives every single day. Then, almost as an afterthought, and this is Darius. She's figuring things out. Figuring things out. At 32. Like I was still some lost college kid instead of a grown woman with a career and a life. Julian was everything the Cole family valued. Prestigious career. Impressive salary. A life that looked perfect on Christmas cards and sounded even better at country club conversations. He drove a Tesla, lived in a penthouse downtown, wore watches that cost more than most people's cars, and he never let anyone forget it. I was the opposite in every way that mattered to my family. I worked as a paramedic. Saved lives too, actually, but apparently that didn't count because I wore a uniform instead of a white coat and my name wasn't followed by MD. My mother, Linda Cole, introduced Julian with pride radiating from every pore. My father, Henry Cole, a retired federal judge, would clap Julian on the back and launch into stories about his surgical innovations. Me, I got tight smiles and subject changes. Still with the ambulance service, my father would ask, his tone suggesting I was volunteering at a petting zoo instead of running emergency medical response. Yes, sir, I'd reply. Just got certified as a flight paramedic. We're doing helicopter emergency response now. That's nice. Nice. Like I told him I'd learned to juggle. Julian had always been the golden child. Even as kids, the difference was stark. His soccer trophies lined the mantel. Mine were in a box somewhere in the garage. His report cards went on the fridge. Mine got a cursory glance and a try harder next time. When he got into medical school, my parents threw a party. When I graduated from my paramedic program, they sent a text. Congratulations. Proud of you. 11 words. No party. No celebration. Just acknowledgement that I'd completed something they considered beneath our family standards. The worst part, Julian wasn't even a bad brother. He wasn't cruel or deliberately hurtful. He was just oblivious. Oblivious to how our parents treated us differently. Oblivious to the comparisons that followed me everywhere. Oblivious to the fact that I'd spent 32 years being the disappointing son in a family that measured worth by prestige and paychecks. Then he met Cassandra Mitchell. And everything got worse. Cassandra was a pharmaceutical sales executive. Beautiful, polished, ambitious in all the ways that photographed well and sounded impressive at dinner parties. She wore designer everything. Carried handbags that cost 5 figures. Spoke 3 languages and name-dropped clients like she was reading a Forbes list. My mother loved her instantly. She's perfect for Julian, Linda gushed after their first family dinner. So sophisticated, so accomplished. They're going to have such a beautiful life together. I should have seen the red flags immediately. The way Cassandra looked at me during that first dinner. Like I was something stuck to her expensive shoe. The way she asked about my job with faux interest, her smile never reaching her eyes. A paramedic? That's so admirable. Really, it takes a special kind of person to do that work. Admirable. The word people use when they mean, I'd never do something so beneath me. But Julian was smitten. Completely, blindly in love. Within 6 months, they were engaged. My mother cried happy tears. My father opened his most expensive scotch. Julian beamed like he'd won the lottery. And Cassandra smiled that perfect, cold smile and started planning a wedding that would cost more than I'd made in 3 years. The engagement party was scheduled for late spring. Black tie, exclusive venue, 200 guests, all the Cole family friends, all of Cassandra's professional contacts, everyone who mattered in their world. My boyfriend Mark and I received our invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, the kind of invitation that screamed money and status. Mark held it carefully, like it might bite her. "This is going to be awful, isn't it?" Mark Bennett was a kindergarten teacher. Sweet, genuine, passionate about his students, exactly the kind of person my parents considered nice but not impressive. He'd met my family exactly 3 times. Each encounter left him quieter than the last. "Probably," I admitted, "but we have to go." "Do we, though?" I wished I could say no. Wished I could skip it, avoid the inevitable comparisons, the pitying looks, the casual dismissals. But this was my brother's engagement party, and despite everything, I loved Julian. So we went. What my family didn't know, what I'd carefully hidden for reasons that felt clearer every day, was that I hadn't just been figuring things out. I'd been building something. 3 years ago, after a particularly brutal shift where we'd lost a patient because the hospital's emergency communication system failed, I'd started coding. Just basic stuff at first. Teaching myself Python and JavaScript in the spare hours between shifts. Then I built a prototype, a real-time emergency response coordination platform that connected paramedics, YARs, and specialists instantly, reducing response times, saving lives through better information flow. I called it MedLink. I'd pitched it to exactly one hospital system. They bought it immediately, then another, then 5 more. Within 18 months, MedLink was operating in 43 hospital systems across 6 states. Last year's revenue, $12 million. This year's projected, $30 million. I had investors calling me, hospital administrators, flying in for demonstrations. A tech acquisition firm had just offered $85 million for the company. But I still worked my shifts as a paramedic, still responded to emergencies, still did the work I actually loved while my side project generated wealth I'd never imagined possible. Why didn't I tell my family? Because they'd spent 32 years deciding who I was without ever asking. They'd measured me against standards I never agreed to and found me wanting. So I'd let them keep believing their version of Darius. The disappointing daughter, the one who chose a simple career over real success, while I quietly built an empire they couldn't even imagine. Mark knew, of course. He'd been there through the late nights, the failed pitches, the moments I almost gave up. He'd celebrated every milestone with me, every new hospital contract, every funding round, every impossible goal we'd somehow achieved. "You should tell them," he'd said more than once. "Your parents should know what you've accomplished." "Why?" I'd asked. "So they can take credit, so they can suddenly decide I'm worth celebrating." He didn't have an answer for that. Neither did I. So I kept working, kept building, kept proving to myself that their opinion of me didn't matter. Even though, deep down, I knew it did. The engagement party was exactly as insufferable as I'd predicted. The venue was stunning. A historic ballroom with crystal chandeliers, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everyone dressed in their finest. Tuxedos and evening gowns, jewelry that sparkled under the lights, conversations that buzzed with the self-important energy of successful people congratulating each other for being successful. Mark and I arrived fashionably on time. He wore a simple black shirt and pant from Nordstrom Rack. I wore my one good suit, purchased 5 years ago for a funeral. We looked fine, appropriate, but not expensive, not impressive. My mother greeted us at the entrance, resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than Riley's monthly rent. "Darius, Mark, so glad you could make it." Her hug was brief, performative, the kind you give distant relatives you're obligated to acknowledge. Then she turned to greet the couple behind us, friends of Cassandra's parents, with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. The difference was subtle, but I'd spent a lifetime reading those subtle differences. We made our way into the ballroom. Julian spotted us immediately and bounded over, genuinely happy to see me. "Dee, you made it!" He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, I remembered why I still showed up to these things. Because beneath all the prestige and privilege, Julian was still my brother. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, forcing a smile. Cassandra appeared at his side, perfectly coiffed, her diamond engagement ring catching the light like a tiny disco ball. Darius, Mark. Her smile was ice-carved into politeness. Thank you for coming. Congratulations, Mark offered warmly. The venue is beautiful. Yes, we wanted something special. The pause before special carried weight, implied that special was something we wouldn't understand. The evening proceeded exactly as I'd anticipated. Julian and Cassandra held court. My parents introduced them to everyone important, listing their accomplishments like auction items. I orbited the edges with Mark, making small talk with relatives who struggled to remember what I did for a living. Then came the speeches. My father went first, stood at the microphone with his judge's bearing, commanding the room's attention effortlessly. He spoke about Julian with genuine pride, about watching him grow into an exceptional man, about his dedication to medicine, about the lives he'd saved and the difference he'd made. Every word landed like a weight on my chest. And Cassandra, my father continued, turning toward her with a warm smile. You are exactly the kind of woman we hoped Julian would find. Accomplished, intelligent, a perfect match for our son. The room applauded. Cassandra beamed. My father raised his glass. To Julian and Cassandra, may your future be as bright as your present. More applause, more champagne, more celebration of the golden couple. Then Cassandra took the microphone. She thanked everyone for coming. Thanked my parents for raising such an incredible man. Thanked her own parents for their support. Then her eyes found me in the crowd, and something shifted in her expression. Something cold and calculated. You know, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sound system. Julian and I are so blessed to have such supportive families. People who understand what it means to work hard and achieve real success. She paused, letting the words hang. Of course, not everyone is cut out for that kind of ambition. And that's okay. The world needs all kinds of people, right? Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. She wasn't done. Take Julian's sister Darius, for example. She gestured toward me, and suddenly every eye in the room was on me. My stomach dropped. Darius works as a paramedic, which is just so admirable. Really, someone has to do those jobs, you know? The helping professions, the service roles. Her tone was syrupy sweet, condescending, dripping with false praise. And we're just so glad she could take time away from her ambulance to be here tonight. Because family is important, even if some family members need a little extra support. She smiled, raised her glass toward me. To Darius, our family's reminder that not everyone needs to be extraordinary. Sometimes being ordinary is enough. The room went quiet, not silent, quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when people are deeply uncomfortable but don't know how to respond. A few awkward chuckles. Someone coughed. Glasses clinked uncertainly. And Mark's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard it hurt. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to say something, to defend me, to shut down this public humiliation. My mother was looking at her champagne glass. My father was nodding slightly, like Cassandra had made a reasonable point. Julian looked uncomfortable, but he didn't say anything. Just gave me an apologetic smile that meant nothing without action behind it. Even Mark froze, his hand in mine, but his voice silent. Cassandra continued her speech, moving on to thank the caterers, and the wedding planner, and everyone else who'd made the evening possible. But I couldn't hear her anymore. The ringing in my ears was too loud. I stood slowly. My chair scraped against the marble floor. Everyone looked at me, and I pulled out my phone. Darius! Julian started, but I held up my hand. 1 second, I said quietly. My fingers moved across my phone screen with absolute certainty. For 6 months, I'd known this moment was coming. Not this exact moment, not this specific humiliation. But I'd known Cassandra's contempt for me would eventually boil over publicly. I'd seen it building every time she looked at me, every passive-aggressive comment, every dismissive gesture. So I'd prepared, not out of malice, not out of revenge, out of self-preservation. Because people like Cassandra, people who measured worth by prestige and paycheck, always underestimated people like me. And underestimation is the greatest tactical advantage you can have. 3 months ago, I'd hired a private investigator. Not to dig up dirt, but to verify something I'd suspected for a while. Cassandra's perfect life had cracks. The investigator confirmed it. 2 months ago, I'd reached out to my contacts at 3 major hospital systems. The same systems that had contracted with MedLink. I'd asked careful questions, made discreet inquiries, gathered documentation, and 1 month ago, I compiled everything into a single folder on my phone. Just in case Cassandra decided to make me her public punching bag. Just in case my family stood by and watched it happen. Just in case I needed to finally show them exactly who they'd been dismissing for 32 years. Mark leaned close. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "What I should have done years ago," I replied. I pulled up the first document. A contract. Official letterhead from Mercy General Hospital, the hospital where Julian worked as chief of surgery. The same hospital where Cassandra claimed to have her biggest pharmaceutical sales account. Like this video if you're ready for what happened next. I turned my phone screen toward the head table. Toward Cassandra, Julian, and my parents. "Cassandra," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise of the ballroom. "You mentioned my ordinary life. My simple job. Can I ask you something?" She blinked, clearly not expecting me to engage. Her smile tightened slightly. "Of course, Darius. How's your pharmaceutical sales territory doing? You work with Mercy General, right? Julian's hospital." Her expression flickered. Just for a second. "Yes," she said carefully. "It's going very well. One of my top accounts." "Interesting," I said, scrolling through my phone. "Because according to Mercy General's procurement records, which are public, by the way, since they're a publicly funded hospital, they haven't purchased pharmaceuticals from your company in 8 months. The quiet that had filled the room earlier became absolute silence. Cassandra's face went pale. "In fact," I continued, my voice still calm, still measured, "according to these records, your company lost the Mercy General contract last January. Something about pricing disputes and quality control issues." I looked up at her, held her gaze. "So if you haven't been selling to them for 8 months, what exactly have you been doing when you told Julian you were at sales meetings there?" Julian's head snapped toward Cassandra. "What is she talking about?" She recovered quickly, I'll give her that. Her smile returned, though it looked more like a grimace. "This is ridiculous. Darius clearly doesn't understand how pharmaceutical sales works. Contracts are complicated." "You're right," I interrupted. "I don't understand pharmaceutical sales, but I do understand fraud." I pulled up another document. "I also don't understand why someone with such a successful sales career would have been fired from their previous company for embezzlement." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cassandra's face went from pale to red. "That's a lie." "It's public record," I said, turning the screen so more people could see. "Filed in civil court. Your previous employer sued you for misappropriating client funds. The case was settled out of court with a non-disclosure agreement." I looked at Julian, whose face had gone completely white. "But NDAs don't cover criminal background checks, Julian." Which is how I found it. The ballroom erupted. Not with noise, but with movement. People leaning toward each other, whispering frantically. Phones coming out. My parents standing up from the head table, shock written across both their faces. And Julian, staring at Cassandra like she was a stranger. "Tell me she's lying," Julian said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please tell me she's making this up." Cassandra's mouth opened and closed. Her perfect composure completely shattered. "Julian, I can explain." "Explain what?" His voice rose, incredulous. "Explain why you've been lying about your job? About where you've been going? About your entire professional history? It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice still maddeningly calm. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been deceiving my brother for over a year. Lying about your career. Lying about your past. Using him for his money and status while treating his family, treating me, like we're beneath you." Her eyes snapped to mine, and for the first time, I saw real fear there. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said quietly. "The moment you decided to publicly humiliate me, you made this my business." I wasn't done. I pulled up one more document. The most important one. And since we're talking about ordinary lives and extraordinary achievements, let me share something with this room. I turned to address everyone, not just Cassandra. My name is Darius Cole. I'm a paramedic, like Cassandra so helpfully reminded everyone. What she doesn't know, what none of you know, is that I'm also the founder and CEO of MedLink. Confused faces, people glancing at each other. My father's eyes narrowed. MedLink. It's an emergency response coordination platform, I explained. We integrate hospital emergency departments with EMS services, reducing response times and saving lives through better communication technology. I let that sink in for a moment. We currently operate in 43 hospital systems across 6 states. Last year's revenue was $12 million. This year we're projected to hit $30 million. More gasps. Louder this time. And 3 weeks ago, I accepted an acquisition offer from Health Tech Solutions for $85 million. The silence was deafening. So when Cassandra called me ordinary, I continued, looking directly at her. When she suggested I was the family charity case who needed extra support, she was talking about someone who built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing while working full-time saving lives. I turned to my parents. You never asked what I was working on. Never asked why I spent so many late nights on my laptop. Never wondered if maybe there was more to my life than what you decided I was worth. My mother's hand was over her mouth. My father looked like someone had punched him. You measured me by your standards, I said, my voice thick with years of suppressed hurt, and found me wanting. But I wasn't failing. I was succeeding. I just wasn't doing it the way you could brag about at the country club. Julian stood slowly, walked over to me, and pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I should have seen it. Should have stopped her. Should have defended you. I hugged him back, feeling something crack open in my chest. I know, I said. When he pulled away, he turned to Cassandra. Get out. Julian, please. Get out. His voice was steel. The engagement is off. The wedding is canceled. And I never want to see you again. Cassandra looked around desperately. At my parents, at her own parents sitting in stunned silence, at the 200 guests watching her world implode in real time. No one came to her defense. She grabbed her clutch purse and fled, her heels clicking rapidly against the marble floor, echoing through the silent ballroom until the door closed behind her. And then the room erupted, not with judgment, but with conversation. People crowding around me, asking questions about MedLink, about the acquisition, about how I'd hidden this for so long. My father pushed through the crowd, stood in front of me, and did something I'd never seen him do in my entire life. He cried. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, child. I've been a terrible father. I measured you by my own insecurities instead of seeing who you actually are. My mother appeared beside him, tears streaming down her face. We're so proud of you, she whispered. We should have said that years ago. Every day. We should have celebrated you instead of comparing you. The next morning, I woke up to 200 text messages, half from family members apologizing, half from reporters wanting interviews. Apparently, someone had recorded the whole confrontation, posted it online. By noon, the video had 5 million views. By evening, I was trending on 3 platforms. Paramedic CEO destroys fiancé at engagement party was apparently very compelling content. But the real justice wasn't the viral moment. It was what happened after. My parents called a family meeting. No pretense. No performance. Just honesty. They apologized. Really apologized. Acknowledged years of favoritism, of dismissiveness, of making me feel invisible while celebrating Julian for simply existing in their preferred mold. We're going to do better, my father said. Not just say it. Actually do it. And slowly, painfully they did. Sunday dinners became real conversations instead of status updates. My mother asked about my work with genuine curiosity instead of polite dismissal. My father started introducing me as Darius, our daughter who built MedLink, with actual pride in his voice. Julian and I grew closer. He'd been so wrapped up in Cassandra's lies, in the image of perfect success she'd sold him, that he'd stopped seeing clearly. I'm glad you exposed her, he told me weeks later over coffee. I was miserable. Just didn't realize it because the relationship looked right on paper. He'd started dating someone new, an ER nurse, someone real who loved him for who he was, not what he represented. Mark and I got engaged 6 months later. Simple ceremony. Just family and close friends. No expensive venue. No champagne toasts ranking people by prestige. Just love. Just celebration. Just people who actually saw each other. The acquisition closed in September. $85 million. Money I'd never imagined having. But the real wealth wasn't in the bank account. It was in my father calling to ask about my day, genuinely interested in the answer. In my mother texting me articles about emergency medical technology, trying to understand my world. In Julian introducing me to his colleagues as my sister, the genius who revolutionized EMS communication. In Mark looking at me every morning like I was enough exactly as I was. For 32 years, I'd been the disappointing daughter. The ordinary one. The family charity case. But I'd never been ordinary. I'd just been underestimated. And underestimation, I'd learned, is the greatest gift you can give someone who's been quietly building an empire while you weren't paying attention. Because the quiet ones, we're not weak. We're not invisible. We're not disappointing. We're just strategic. And when we finally speak, when we finally show you who we've been all along, we don't miss. We don't waver. We just tell the truth. And the truth is the most powerful weapon anyone can wield. My name is Darius Cole. I'm a paramedic. I'm a CEO. I'm worth $85 million. And I'm exactly enough.